The forest fell silent before the storm. Even the birds, usually loud and fearless, hid among the treetops. The air was charged with tension like a string pulled too tight. Jack Morrison, an elderly forest ranger, stood by the window of his cabin and watched the darkening sky. He had lived in these woods for nearly 40 years and could always sense when something serious was coming. That evening, the storm broke. Lightning slashed the sky, illuminating tree trunks like spotlights on a stage. Rain poured in sheets, and the forest rumbled like a giant drum. Jack didn't sleep that night. He knew such a storm could leave behind more than broken branches. It could scatter nests and take lives. When morning came, the forest looked battered. Branches lay strewn about, and the grass was pressed flat to the earth. Jack headed out on his usual patrol, his backpack slung over his shoulder. He knew every stump and bend in the trail, but today the walk was slower, too much wreckage. In a patch of ferns, he heard a faint squeak, a barely audible sound, but his trained ear caught it. He crouched down, parting the wet undergrowth. At the base of a mighty oak, a small bundle of red fur lay shivering. A baby squirrel. Soaked, matted, barely moving. Its eyes were closed, thin legs trembling. The nest must have been ripped from the branches, shredded leaves and twigs scattered nearby. "Hang in there, little guy," Jack whispered as he gently lifted the creature into his hand. "You weren't meant to die today." Jack returned home with the baby. He found an old shoebox, lined it with a wool scarf, and placed the squirrel inside. The cabin was chilly, so he set the box near the stove, close enough for warmth, not too close. He wasn't used to caring for anyone, but now he spoke to the squirrel softly, like a child. "You're gonna make it. I'll call you Rusty. You're red and scruffy, and that name fits you just fine." He warmed some milk, diluted it with water, and gently let drops fall onto the squirrel's lips. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Rusty opened his mouth and accepted a drop. That was enough. All night, Jack sat by the box. He had never raised children, never been a father, but now, in this fragile creature, something stirred inside him. By the third day, Rusty opened his eyes, cautious at first, then more confidently. Every day, he fed him with a syringe of milk and crushed nuts. Rusty grew fast. Within a week, he was hopping around the windowsill. A few days later, he was climbing Jack's shoulder. They became inseparable. Jack talked to him every day, and Rusty responded with his high-pitched squeaks. "You belong in the wild," Jack said one evening, sitting by the fire, "and I've tamed you. Maybe that's not right." He started to wonder what would happen next. Could Rusty survive in the wild after living with a human? Would he be too trusting? Easy prey? But keeping him forever didn't seem right either. Deep down, Jack knew freedom wasn't his to keep. Spring arrived. Snow melted. The forest awakened. Jack knew it was time. He carried Rusty back to the oak where he had found him. He knelt, opened the box. Inside, two curious eyes looked back at him. Rusty stepped out, sniffed the air, rose onto his hind legs, then dashed into the woods. Jack watched as the red blur vanished among the trees, leaping from branch to branch. He didn't know if Rusty would ever return, but he knew one thing: he had done the right thing. After Rusty left, the cabin felt unusually quiet. Jack went about his days as usual, up at dawn, patrolling trails, tending the forest. But coming home was different. No one scurried to greet him, tugged at his scarf, or tried to hide a nut in his boot. He didn't complain, he never had. But sometimes, when he brewed tea in the evening, his eyes lingered on the old shoebox with the scarf, and he'd hold his breath just a second longer than usual. Spring passed. Summer came. The forest came alive. Birds sang. Rabbits darted through meadows. Squirrels chased each other in the trees. Jack saw many fast, red, nimble. And each time his heart leapt, could that be him? One warm July afternoon, Jack wandered deep into the woods near the old swamp trail. He carried a small pouch of food for the owl she liked to check on them during dry spells. As he made his way through the ferns and mossy roots, he heard soft rustling above. He looked up. There, on a low-hanging pine branch, sat a red squirrel. bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and unmistakably familiar Rusty. But this time, Rusty didn't just watch. With a cheerful chirp, he leapt from the branch and scurried down the trunk. In a flash, he was on the ground, darting across the path toward Jack, with the quick, confident energy of someone returning home. He stopped right at Jack's boots, stood on his hind legs, and stretched up, tiny paws reaching toward his old friend. Jack dropped to a knee, surprised, smiling. "Well, look at you," he said softly. Rusty climbed up onto his leg, then onto his arm, circling once before, sitting calmly on Jack's shoulder just like he used to. He nuzzled against the side of Jack's face, and for a moment, the forest went quiet. No birdsong, no wind, just the gentle contact of one life remembering another. "I missed you too," Jack whispered. After a few minutes, Rusty leapt down, chirped once more, and disappeared into the trees, but not far. Jack knew he was nearby, now checking in, watching. The visits became more frequent after that. Some days he'd find nuts left neatly near the doorstep. Other days he'd see Rusty lounging on the porch rail, waiting. It wasn't just memory, it was friendship, and it never truly left. Autumn came with mist and cold dew. Jack stacked firewood, sealed windows. One morning, a pine cone appeared on the windowsill, fresh, recently placed. He smiled. A gift, or a message, "I'm here." Rusty disappeared for the winter, probably nested in some hollow tree, but signs remained. A nibbled nut, scratches on bark, a gentle rustle overhead. They no longer needed to be close, but the bond remained grown, matured, unshakable. Spring came early that year. The snow had barely lingered, and the forest awakened quickly. Trees dressed in soft green, trickling streams returned to the paths. As usual, John sat on his porch with a mug of warm tea. Birds chirped, the breeze carried the scent of earth and new growth, and the world felt fresh again. He wasn't expecting anything special. The pine cones on his windowsill had become tradition. Each one brought a quiet smile, a reminder, someone remembers. But that morning, something different happened. There was a light scurrier patter of tiny feet across the porch. John looked down and froze. Rusty, grown, fluffy, bright-eyed, but he wasn't alone. From behind the steps, 3 young squirrels appeared, smaller, a bit scruffy, full of energy. They hovered near their father, who gave them a gentle nudge. Hesitantly, they began climbing up his leg, then his knee, and finally, they settled right in his lap. "Well now," John whispered, voice trembling, "you brought your family to meet me." One of the squirrels grabbed at his shirt button, the other nestled its nose into his sleeve. Rusty sat nearby, calm, steady. He looked into John's eyes, and in that gaze was everything: gratitude, trust, and something even deeper, shared memory. John's chest swelled with warmth. He was no longer just an old man in the woods. He was part of something larger now. A chapter in a life, a part of the forest, a thread in the story that would quietly continue. Branch by branch, heartbeat by heartbeat,